We all die someday. That's the one truth no one can escape, yet most of us live our lives ignoring it, running behind money, fame, likes and followers, thinking these things will make us happy. But what if I told you that accepting this harsh truth, that one day everything will end, could actually make your life more meaningful, more peaceful, and way more beautiful? In today's video on Simplified Whispers, we're diving deep into one of the most powerful books of our time, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. This book doesn't just change the way you think, it forces you to question what really matters, what's truly worth giving a fuck about, and how does facing death make you live better? Stay with me till the end, because you don't want to miss this. Chapter 1. Don't Try challenges the modern obsession with positivity, arguing that life is filled with struggles and pain, and the key to a good life is not avoiding problems, but choosing what truly matters to you and what is worth struggling for. The book opens with the story of Charles Bukowski, who became successful not because he tried hard, but because he accepted his failures and wrote honestly about them. Manson explains the feedback loop from hell, where we suffer because we keep worrying about our negative feelings, and suggests that trying to avoid pain and chase constant happiness only makes us more miserable. Instead of aiming for perfection, we should accept that life is messy, full of suffering, and that happiness comes from solving meaningful problems rather than escaping them. By learning to care only about things aligned with our values, we stop wasting energy on superficial worries like material success or validation from others. Manson also emphasizes that nobody is inherently special or exceptional, and that accepting our ordinary nature frees us from entitlement and unrealistic expectations. He introduces concepts like the value of suffering, the importance of taking responsibility for our lives, and being willing to say no to things that don't serve us. True personal growth comes not from chasing success, but from embracing failure, rejection, and even death as inevitable parts of life. By letting go of our need for certainty and control, we create space for honest self-awareness and better relationships. Ultimately, the book teaches that a meaningful life is about carefully choosing what to give a fuck about, focusing only on what truly matters, and learning to embrace discomfort as part of the journey, rather than constantly running away from it. Chapter 2. Happiness is a problem. In Chapter 2, starts with the story of a prince, later known as Buddha, who was raised in complete luxury, protected from all suffering. But when he saw pain, sickness, and death for the first time, he realized that happiness couldn't be found in comfort or pleasure alone. No matter how good life seems, problems and suffering are inevitable. Mark Manson explains that humans are wired to feel dissatisfaction because that discomfort drives us to improve and survive. Chasing constant happiness only leads to frustration because life is an endless cycle of problems. Even when we solve one, another appears. The secret is not to avoid problems, but to find meaningful ones that are worth solving. Manson introduces the fictional disappointment panda, who tells harsh truths. Happiness comes from solving problems, not from running away from them. Our emotional pain signals where changes are needed, and facing those tough emotions helps us grow stronger. Manson argues that modern culture glorifies positive emotions and avoids negative ones, but this mindset is unhealthy. Pain and suffering are biologically necessary. They push us toward change and improvement. People often avoid problems through denial or playing the victim, but that only leads to misery. Real happiness, he says, is active. It comes from solving meaningful problems, not from escaping them or chasing highs like money or status. He introduces the concept of the hedonic treadmill, where people chase new achievements or pleasures, but always end up feeling the same, because new problems replace old ones. The chapter concludes by saying that instead of asking, "What do I want in life?" we should ask, "What pain am I willing to endure?" Because meaningful success and happiness come from choosing the struggles we enjoy. Only by embracing life's challenges can we experience real joy, fulfillment, and emotional growth. Chapter 3. You are not special. In Chapter 3, Mark Manson challenges the belief that everyone is special and destined for greatness. He shares the story of a man named Jimmy, who constantly bragged about big business ideas, but never actually achieved anything. Jimmy's sense of entitlement made him believe he deserved success without hard work. Manson blames the self-esteem movement of the 1970s and 1980s, where children were constantly told they were special and deserved rewards just for existing. This created a generation obsessed with feeling good about themselves, even if they hadn't earned it. According to Manson, true self-worth comes from facing our flaws and failures honestly, not from pretending to be exceptional. When people avoid challenges and blame others for their problems, they trap themselves in cycles of insecurity and entitlement. Accepting that we are not special helps us grow, focus on meaningful goals, and develop real confidence instead of chasing constant validation. Manson explains that feeling entitled makes people believe that good things should happen just because they exist. But this mindset is dangerous. Entitled people see every success as proof of their greatness, and every failure as someone else's fault. They avoid responsibility, inflate their self-image, and live in denial, which leads to disappointment and failure. True growth happens when we accept that we are average and face life's struggles head-on. Life is not supposed to be easy, and constant success is unrealistic. Instead of thinking we are too special to fail, we should embrace our imperfections and take responsibility for our lives. Manson argues that by accepting we are not special, we remove the pressure to constantly prove ourselves and focus on building real skills, values, and relationships. It is only through this humility that we achieve lasting happiness and meaningful success. Entitlement leads to weakness, but honesty about our limitations builds strength. Chapter 4. The Value of Suffering. In Chapter 4, Mark Manson explains that suffering is an unavoidable part of life, but what truly matters is the reason behind our suffering. Everyone faces struggles, but the quality of our life depends on choosing meaningful struggles that align with our values. Manson introduces the self-awareness onion, which has layers: knowing what we feel, understanding why we feel it, and finally, questioning whether our values are good or bad. Many people get stuck in shallow layers, never questioning if what they care about truly matters. We chase shallow values like being liked, being right, or feeling good all the time, but these lead to endless suffering. True growth happens when we adopt better values, those that are reality-based, socially constructive, and immediate. By doing so, we gain control over our suffering instead of being controlled by it. Manson emphasizes that we must define our values carefully, because our values decide the meaning of our pain. Manson discusses how people often develop shitty values that are based on superficial desires like popularity, money, or always feeling good. These values set us up for endless frustration because they are outside our control and never fully satisfying. He shares how even successful people, like rock stars, struggle because of poor values, leading to more suffering despite their fame. Instead, Manson urges readers to develop good values, ones based on honesty, responsibility, humility, and personal growth. Good values help us face our struggles with strength and clarity because they are within our control. They don't depend on external validation, but on our own actions and mindset. Ultimately, the chapter teaches that suffering is inevitable, but when our suffering serves a good purpose, it brings meaning and fulfillment. The key is not to avoid pain, but to choose the right reasons to suffer, because our values shape the meaning of everything we experience in life. Chapter 5. You are always choosing. In Chapter 5, Mark Manson emphasizes that we are always responsible for how we react to life situations, even if we cannot control what happens to us. He explains that taking responsibility for our feelings, choices, and actions is the foundation of personal growth. Many people confuse responsibility with fault, but they are different. Something may not be your fault, like a tragedy, accident, or betrayal, but how you respond is always your responsibility. Manson shares examples like a man who lost his family but chose to find meaning in helping others, proving that our reactions shape our lives. People often fall into the trap of victimhood chic, where they blame others or circumstances and expect sympathy. But this mindset keeps them weak and helpless. Manson argues that life is full of pain and struggle, but we always have the power to choose what that pain means and how it shapes us. Manson further explains that blaming genetics, fate, or society for our problems only leads to resentment and a lack of control over life. True freedom comes from understanding that while we cannot always control what happens, we can always choose how to interpret it and what actions to take next. He stresses that even difficult situations offer choices to learn, to act, or to grow. By avoiding responsibility, we waste our energy feeling stuck and powerless. Manson rejects the idea of waiting for a how-to guide for life, saying there is no perfect method or guaranteed plan. Instead, life is about constantly making choices, facing the consequences, and adjusting. The chapter ends with the message that only when we fully accept responsibility for everything we experience can we truly grow and build a meaningful life. This mindset gives us the power to change our circumstances and break free from the cycle of blame and victimhood. Chapter 6. You're wrong about everything, but so am I. In Chapter 6, Mark Manson explains that human beings are often wrong about their beliefs, thoughts, and perceptions because our understanding of the world is shaped by limited experiences and biased thinking. He says our brains are wired to create stories that make us feel good, even if they are untrue. This tendency makes us overly confident in our knowledge and blind to our mistakes. Manson shares his own example of being wrong in relationships and realizing that certainty is dangerous because it prevents growth and learning. He introduces Manson's law of avoidance, which states that the more something threatens our identity, the more we avoid it. People avoid tough situations not because they are impossible, but because facing them challenges their self-image. Manson argues that embracing the idea that we're wrong about many things opens us up to growth, helps us develop better relationships, and makes us more compassionate toward others. Manson emphasizes that pure certainty is the root of many problems in life, from personal conflicts to global issues like wars and violence. When people are too certain they're right, they become defensive and refuse to see other perspectives. This need to be right leads to suffering, failed relationships, and missed opportunities for growth. He shares a dark moment from his own life when he considered suicide, believing he had no options left, but later realized it was his false belief, not reality, that trapped him. The chapter teaches that questioning our beliefs and accepting uncertainty is the path to becoming wiser and more open-minded. Instead of chasing the illusion of being right all the time, we should focus on becoming a little less wrong every day. Manson concludes that accepting our ignorance, being open to change, and embracing uncertainty are crucial steps toward living a better, more meaningful life. Chapter 7. Failure is the way forward. In Chapter 7, Mark Manson explains that failure is not the opposite of success, but the path to achieving it. Most people fear failure and avoid taking action because they don't want to face pain or embarrassment. However, Manson argues that avoiding failure leads to stagnation, while embracing it helps us grow. He introduces the failure-success paradox, explaining that the more we fail, the more we learn, and the better we become. Every successful person has failed countless times, but what made them succeed was their willingness to keep going. Manson shares the do something principle, which suggests that instead of waiting for motivation or inspiration, we should take action first. Because action creates motivation, not the other way around. Taking small steps helps us break the cycle of fear and builds momentum. The chapter emphasizes that progress is made by doing, failing, learning, and doing it again. Manson further explains that people often sit around waiting for the perfect idea, the perfect time, or enough confidence before starting something. But waiting for inspiration is a trap that keeps people stuck. Instead, action itself creates the motivation and clarity we need. By doing, we learn and gain feedback, which guides us toward better decisions. Manson highlights that failure is unavoidable because life is unpredictable, and no one gets everything right the first time. The real difference between successful and unsuccessful people is their attitude toward failure. Successful people see it as part of the process, while others see it as a sign to give up. The chapter teaches that embracing failure is liberating because it removes the fear of making mistakes. Every failure refines our skills, toughens our mindset, and moves us closer to our goals. In the end, the path to success is messy, filled with failures, but it's the only way forward. Chapter 8: The Importance of Saying No. In Chapter 8, Mark Manson explains that saying no is one of the most important skills we need to live a good life because it helps us set boundaries and focus only on what truly matters. Most people avoid rejection or upsetting others, but this habit makes their relationships weak and their lives complicated. Manson argues that rejecting certain things, people, or desires allows us to commit fully to what we truly value. He shares that healthy relationships are built not on constant agreement, but on the freedom to say no and handle rejection without falling apart. By setting clear boundaries, we gain self-respect and attract people who respect us too. Trust is also built this way. When people know they can be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Saying no might be difficult, but it creates deeper connections because both sides know their choices and feelings are respected. Manson also emphasizes that real freedom doesn't come from having endless choices, but from choosing to commit to something meaningful. Whether it's a career, relationship, or personal goal, committing means rejecting everything else. And that's what truly gives life direction. Avoiding commitment might feel like freedom, but it actually leads to confusion, dissatisfaction, and shallow relationships. Manson explains that by learning to say no, we stop spreading ourselves thin and start focusing on the few things that truly align with our values. The power of saying no helps us avoid distractions, people-pleasing, and wasting time on things that don't matter. Ultimately, the chapter teaches that rejection is not something to fear, but a necessary part of creating a life filled with purpose and depth. Only by rejecting what's not important can we fully embrace what is, leading to stronger relationships, better trust, and real happiness. Chapter 9: And Then You Die. In the final chapter, Mark Manson confronts the ultimate truth, death, and explains how accepting our mortality gives life true meaning. He argues that people spend most of their lives avoiding thoughts of death, but this fear leads to shallow desires like chasing money, fame, or attention. Manson shares the story of a friend's sudden death, which forced him to face the reality that life is temporary and unpredictable. This experience made him realize that what we do, love, and believe truly matters only when we understand it all ends one day. By accepting death, we stop wasting time on petty things and focus on what's meaningful: relationships, personal growth, and the legacy we leave behind. Death strips away everything fake and forces us to see what truly matters. Manson calls this the sunny side of death, where mortality helps us live more fully and honestly. Manson explains that facing death reduces our fear of rejection, failure, or judgment, because in the end, none of it matters. Death acts as a mirror, showing us the parts of life we've been ignoring or avoiding. People often seek immortality through fame, legacy, or even their children. But true immortality lies in the impact we create on others' lives, no matter how small. Accepting that we are insignificant in the vast universe helps us live with more humility and gratitude. Instead of worrying about being special or perfect, we start caring about how we treat people and how we live each day. Manson concludes the book by reminding us that everything we love and care about will end. And that's why it's so important to choose what we give our attention to wisely. Embracing our limited time on Earth gives us the freedom to live authentically, love deeply, and stop giving a fuck about anything unimportant. So, that was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. A reminder that life is short, Your time is limited, and not everything deserves your attention. If you found this video helpful and you enjoy deep, thought-provoking book summaries like this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Simplified Whispers. Because here, we simplify powerful books and ideas, just for you. I'll be back soon with another life-changing book. Until then, take care, stay curious, and remember, give your fucks wisely.